Okay, so I named the show today Russia, 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 because there was this constant, over the Mueller investigation. Obviously, stuff is starting to leak out and or come out officially, which is the beautiful part, the official channels. That not only were there a lot of areas where the Mueller team um, were not allowed to look because of interference from Rod Rosenstein, who at one point gave us the illusion of being the savior of the whole thing. You know, thank you, new patron, yay. We all thought, well, Rod Rosenstein, phew, at least he's there to protect the Mueller investigation. When in reality, he was there to protect the illusion of the Mueller investigation while stopping them from looking at anything meaningful, mainly Trump's financial ties to Russia. They left that completely out, which in your motive, means, and opportunity rule of trying to prove a crime eliminates the motive. And in some cases, depending on if the money was flowing directly, the means. Because
Right.
in him getting elected or keeping his businesses afloat or getting money from somewhere to pay Stormy Daniels and to pay others to keep their mouth shut, where'd that money come from? Was that directly from the Trump organization, or were they bouncing it through him from Russia as a favor? Did he only have that money because he was engaged in phony real estate deals, buying a $20 million house, selling it for $90 million, and then the dude bulldozes it, and it hasn't been, doesn't end up being worth anything now at all, swampland, right? So over the last, the Washington Post was reporting on the connection um, between Paul Manafort and Konstantin Kalimnik. That's been fairly well known. That was addressed in the Mueller report a few times. What wasn't addressed and what was sort of hidden from the public, both redacted in the stuff that they would allow to be released, that was that many people knew of, and it was spoken of in terms of news reports contemporaneously at the time, which Trump, of course, referred to as fake news repeatedly, was that he was connected to the Russian GRU, that he was connected to the Russian group that actually was trying to manipulate our elections and was also tied to other actions. What we would eventually know as like the Solar Winds hack, which I'm going to go into a little bit today because I don't know how many people know the actual details of what that is, and how to kind of get a grasp of how permeate and deep that was. So the Konstantin Kalimnik thing was a story that you heard in a lot of Washington Post and New York Times stories, especially Newsweek and Time covered it at the time because it was fairly well known in the fact that that Manafort was working with the Russian-backed president of Ukraine, and this guy, who's now, by the way, escaped the country, lives under the protection of Vladimir Putin in Russia, if that gives you any indication of the man's loyalties. And we know that Manafort both worked for him. We know that Manafort is an evil scumbag who hired men on Craigslist to sexually assault his wife, who had been injured in a car accident. His daughters won't even talk to him anymore. They view him as evil incarnate. The text messages back and forth between them is some of the most vile stuff I've ever heard children say about their parent that wasn't on a Netflix documentary about someone with stalker in their nickname. So Kalimnik himself, though, was tied to Manafort, and obviously tied to some of the stuff that went on in Ukraine. Now we know that Yushchenko is in Russia, living under the protection of Vladimir Putin, and Kalimnik, we always knew he had this tie to Manafort. What came out officially this week was that from the title of the article is "The Government Finally Connects the Line from Trump's Campaign to Russian Intelligence."
There you go.
Um, from the first moments of the reports on the Russian interference in 2016, compiled by Mueller, that it became public 2 years ago. It was obvious that it contained gaps. The report itself documented places where questions were unhappily left unanswered. We could not establish this. We could not establish that. There were a couple of places in the report, a function of reticence from relevant parties or of encrypted communications, or at times witnesses being unavailable for interview, namely White House witnesses that would not speak, or Russians that while we still have a a warrant for their arrest, a full-on Interpol warrant for their arrest, are obviously either hidden well or dead by now, quite frankly. And in that latter group was a man named Konstantin Kilimnik. Konstantin Kilimnik was indicted by Mueller's team. He sat. Oh, there we go. A 0-1 shirt. Look at that. Yay! Thanks, guys. He was indicted by Mueller's team. He sat at the center of one of the more obvious places where the campaign of then candidate Donald Trump might have intersected with Russia's efforts to get Trump elected. He'd worked with the Trump campaign, Paul Manafort, for years before Manafort joined the campaign effort, despite, and it says, or perhaps because of his sketchy connections to Russia. One of Manafort's primary clients in the years before his volunteering to work for Trump without pay, because remember that Manafort worked for Trump for free. The man had massive debts. Donald Trump is an alleged billionaire who's flush. It isn't just that he's got kind of a Warren Buffett kind of a wealth where he lives in the same little house and most of his money is tied up in, he's a bazillionaire, but it's, you'd have to dissolve giant companies to squeeze any cash out of them right now. And I'm just not willing to do that because I'm sitting on my investments. That kind of zone that, that folks that invest like that do. No, Trump was supposedly flush with cash all the time. He was a big spender. I mean, obviously, a lot of it was charity money that he was redirecting to paintings of himself. But he gave the illusion all the time that I'm running on, and I'm using my own money, so I'm not beholden to anybody. But even though I'm spending my own money, I'm going to get this guy who's willing to work for me for free, who worked for the president of Ukraine who was murdering his own citizens, like right out of the Putin playbook. And have no problem with that. On August 2nd, 2016, with Manafort running the Trump campaign and Gates serving as his deputy, the three met at a cigar club in Midtown Manhattan. Beforehand, Manafort asked Gates to print out campaign polling data. This is, some of you may have heard this report, that this is an information that Manafort apparently gave Kilimnik that night. Mueller's report describes the meeting. They also discussed the status of the Trump campaign and Manafort's strategy for winning Democratic votes in Midwestern states. Months before that meeting, Manafort had caused internal polling data to be shared with Kilimnik, and sharing continued for some period of time after their August meeting. It wasn't just polling data. It was internal strategy documents. It was where they needed help. It was effectively, how it's illegal. Oh, we got to take another break. It's illegal for campaigns to interact with super PACs, to coordinate with super PACs. Super PACs have all this money flowing through them, and campaigns, are getting direct campaign donations, and there the twain shall meet. So we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to explain something to you that Trump didn't invent the canoodling that goes on between super PACs. He just perfected it with an entire country. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. WCPT 820 is the website. You can plug that into your iPad or your phone or what have you when you're out driving in the rest of the country. Or you can go to infotainmentwars.com and watch the stream. Like and subscribe. We'll be back.